it doesn't make sense. From any angle that God would be coming, there would always be a side that couldn't see what was happening. But if we look at this from a flat point of view, from a point of view where these continents are laid out the same way except opened up, and they can all see upwards, up at the sky, it makes a lot more sense if you imagine down, coming from way up in the sky, a huge, from the fist, and then the angels coming down thousands upon thousands, and you know, it makes more sense. It doesn't require as much scientific whatever. So another thing aside from all this picture that I've painted, one thing I've been confronted with is gravity. Now, a lot of people, they tell me, like, so how would gravity work per se? Just because you can lift an object and drop it and it falls to the ground does not necessarily mean that there's this huge long equation forcing stuff onto a globe like Earth. Another way to think of it is that object, it weighs more than the air, just naturally. That if I were to drop this, it weighs more than the air here that it's in. So just according to natural physical laws, just according to laws in general, it's going to go down through it, yes? Yeah. Because it weighs more. Yes, Jade?
What about like the test of density that Mr. Royson showed us, where like the densest were on top and then the least dense were on bottom when you poured soap and then the water and oil and stuff like that?
So, oil, explain to me why oil floats on water. According to...
Because it's denser. More dense.
Well, right, but explain to me how when it's floating on water, since it's more dense, wouldn't you think it would float, it would sink to the bottom? Yes? Wouldn't that naturally make more sense to you?
Yeah, but it doesn't.
Right, but I'm asking why. Like, according to gravitational laws, why would the denser object stay atop of the less dense object?
It's not really a gravity thing, but with yours, like where heavier objects are, they're more heavy than the air, they'll fall below it. What? I'll think about this.
Okay. Come back to the idea of science, because when you get in, finish up. Wrap it up, because if you go longer...
Yeah, I know.
Don't.
So, instead of just putting more just stuff in your guys' faces, I just was wondering what questions you guys had, and if I can answer them, I will, and if I can't, I'll tell you I don't know. Yeah?
What you're saying now is like it's heavier objects just fall because it's heavier than the earth, right? So what you said earlier, like
well, not uniformly. She gave a specific example, but the specific example isn't necessarily extractable to a fundamental outcome, as you've just demonstrated.
So obviously there are things that are not heavier than air. For example, a balloon, helium is not heavier than air, which causes that balloon to rise. But like in my example, this book is heavier than air, and this book will fall onto the table.
She asked me to come in, so I'm going to talk just for a few minutes. My first question to all of you guys is, does anyone know what epistemology is?
No.
No.
Epistemologist?
Epistemology.
Oh. No.
Look it up, Kara.
How do you spell it?
EP.
EP.
IST.
IST.
OMEMOLGY, I believe. It's largely phonetic.
Wait, what?
Epistemology is the investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion.
Okay. So epistemology, this is actually a really important philosophical idea. Epistemology is the study of how we know what we know.
Yeah.
How do we know what we know?
Well, it's
like-
all based off of theory and what we can see.
Proven.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one. You guys both went to the same area. You went to empirical observation. You went to science. But there's also things that we know that we can't prove with a mathematical formula. remember your name. I don't remember your name.
Sophia.
Sophia, do you love your mom?
Yeah,
How do you know?
because I just know.
Can you prove it with a math equation?
No.
Is your love for your mom any less real than this table? Seriously, this is a real important question, especially for you. Do you love your mom?
Yeah.
Do you love her is that love as real as this table?
Yeah.
It certainly is. Can you prove it?
By hugging her? Yeah.
That doesn't prove that you love her.
That's a show of it.
Oh,
That's simply a demonstration of the love, but it doesn't prove the love.
Oh, there is a.
Well,
There is
is
an
it-
equation. Oh, there is? Yeah.
Well, there's an equation, but the question is in that equation whether or not you can attach the equation to the event. Let me illustrate it like this. One time, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, I think the story was maybe 7, I was working on a homicide. And whenever I get homicides, I always have to go to an autopsy. I don't know if any of you have ever seen an autopsy, but what they do is they have a table just like this table, and they get a guy who's dead, take all his clothes off, and he's lying on the table. And the people who were in there, I was there with some of my investigator and some of my students, and there were some other interns in there, and everyone who's never seen this before, they're all just like looking at this dead guy on the table. And then you have a guy who comes with a saw.